Welcome to Ladies Talk Show. This is your host, Leah Richheimer. We have a very serious and important and hopefully, Mir Hashem, helpful show today. We're very, very privileged to have Rabbi Shmuel Luger on with us today from Yerushalayim, and he's going to help walk us through addiction and what is addiction and what we can do about it. And as women and as wives, if our husband has an addiction or if we have addiction, we might as well answer both. Let's cover it all. So welcome. Thank you so much for being with us. Okay, good. So I'm going to ask you a very serious first question, which is, what exactly is addiction? How do you know if it's addiction or whether it's a habit, and is a habit an addiction, and when can you know that it's bad? And so it's like, can you just give us a little bit of insight of what does it mean to have an addiction? How do you know if you have one or if your husband has one?
So it's a very good question. I don't know that I can say it better than a dictionary or encyclopedia, anything like that. I could try to give an example of what an addiction can be that wouldn't necessarily be thought of as being an addiction. So in general, I think that people are in a position that they're always trying to have some sort of emotional regulation. We're trying to tell ourselves that we're okay. We feel that we're okay. We feel that we're fine and everything is good in the world. However, very often we feel that we're missing something. This is built into who we are as people. Okay. You're hungry, you're tired, you're lonely, whatever the case may be, you're going to feel that you're missing something in your life. When you use whatever it is that you were missing, like you were hungry, you ate something. Now you're full, you're good, you're able to move on with your day. Now you have some level of regulation going on that you were missing beforehand. So we won't really think of it in those terms of having something as an addiction. However, if a person is, let's say, depressed, a person is struggling, stressed out, anxiety, whatever the case might be, you eat something and that starts to become your comfort. And you start associating the regulation with eating. And that is something that makes you feel like you're okay. And it could be food. It could be virtually anything. People are addicted to their phones. People are addicted to stealing. People are addicted to literally everything under the sun. Most commonly, people are referring to alcohol and drugs as the primary addictions, but I think the things that we see most these days as being habit forming and addiction forming actually are phones, and I think to a large extent food as well are the most common things that we have. But it could really be anything that the person's going to use that to make themselves feel like they're okay. Now, the way that a person knows if they're an addict, because eating food is not just, something that's good. It's what we need to live, right? Sleep, all of those things are things that a person needs to be able to live. However, if the thing that you're doing is getting in the way of you living a good, healthy, normal life, that is a problem, which may or may not be an addiction. Okay. So what we call an addict is when someone has a behavior that they want to try to stop, or they're having trouble stopping, and basically they can't without some form of intervention. Okay. There are different components, I guess, that you could try to address within addiction. For example, with alcohol or with drugs or something like that, there is definitely a physical or chemical component to the addiction. And that was very often what you see of people going to rehabilitation or detox or something like that to basically get them off the chemical addiction. However, what they like to say in recovery or 12-step programs, things of that nature, is once an addict, always an addict. The real problem that you're going to find is you still haven't learned how to have that sort of emotional regulation in your life. And therefore, just because you're not chemically addicted to one of those things, you still don't know how to deal with life. And that's basically what the solution or 12-step programs are giving over. Really what any therapist, drug counselor, anyone like that is trying to help a person overcome is to be able to live a normal life without needing to rely on insert vice here.
So there's a lot of talk, these days about emotional regulation, and there's different definitions and different ways of looking at it and whatever. And can you just give us a picture of what lack of emotional regulation? What is emotional regulation, and what is lack of it? How does that drive addiction? I'm missing that point.
So I don't know that I'm the most qualified to be, rattling off terms, I guess, and these definitions. But in general, I do feel that when, at least in the circles that I'm in, if people are talking about emotional regulation, is basically, are you happy? Are you unhappy? Are you content in this moment? And if you're not, what are you going to do about it? Okay. No matter what a person's trying to do, you're coming up with coping mechanisms. You're uncomfortable, you're depressed. So Stacey grab some ice cream and you're eating the ice cream. And that's, the sugar rush or whatever it is supposed to help you feel better. Or you just don't want to get out of bed and you pull the covers over your head. Anything like that is basically a person trying to control the environment. Because when you're lacking something, basically you want to feel like you're in control. And there are definitely times in life that a person doesn't feel like they're in control, and you're not supposed to be in control. So a person wants to feel like they're in control, and therefore they're going to do whatever allows them to feel best or feel like they are in control the most in any given moment. And that is, a person will find something, and many people will find different things that they will try to take to make themselves feel good and feel comfortable in that moment. The problem with a lot of these things is, or I don't say a lot of these things, I think everything is, the initial feeling of comfort that you get is not actually going to make you feel better. If you feel good initially, great. Now you're chasing that feeling. However, based on the dopamine release and just everything else that comes up chemically in the brain, it's not going to work. And in a lot of cases, you're going to face serious consequences for whatever it is that you're doing to punish your body, or even emotionally, I guess, depending on what the vice is that a person is leaning into, though. But that's basically a person trying to find some measure of control to make themselves feel good in any given circumstance.
Very good, Rabbi. Can you tell us a little bit about what you do as the intervention that helps? I want people who watch this to sort of understand it a little bit better, especially if it's, near and dear, unfortunately, in their life or whatever. But what kind of options do people have when they're sort of stuck in this negative loop?
So, in a conversation I had with Rabbi Dr. Tversky, he said that one of the most important things to give over, or the most important of, I guess, in this topic, is for a person to realize if he's an addict or if he's not. If you find that whatever it is that you're doing for comfort, you can't live without it, then you are a slave to that thing. And I mean, it goes without saying, Hashem runs the world. So you have to be able to accept life on life's terms. If you can't, and you're finding that something else is you're trying to use to fill the void, you're basically an Eved to, let's say, Ben and Jerry's, as opposed to being Hashem in the moment. So the idea that a person is stuck and fixated, whatever it may be, on this vice is basically they're using it as a replacement for something else. And when that thing doesn't work, they try to do more and more of it because they already associated that as being the solution for whatever ails them. Now, our goal, as you said, of an intervention, and when I say our in most of these terms, I want to clarify that I'm trying to speak from my experience rather than try to, I'm not selling a product here, but I'm trying to give over because from my own experience and from working with many different people, and also seeing the havoc that a lot of these things can cause, I guess, in families. But what you're looking for is not that you shouldn't be able to enjoy life. Obviously, you want to have some level of emotional regulation. However, to just say, okay, so stop eating the cookies, okay? Stop gambling, stop drinking, stop any of that stuff. It's not really a solution because the person hasn't really filled that void and the lacking that he has in his life. And that's really what 12-step programs or any therapist or drug counselor who would work with a person is going to try to address if they're good. It's not about stop doing it. We could do that now, right now. Stop drinking, stop with the ice cream, stop with everything else. Don't do it. You're cured. Why do I need 12 steps? I have 2 words or 1 word. Stop. Or don't do it. Any variety of that. But that doesn't work because a person keeps going back to those things. And so long as a person doesn't put something in his life that's better and going to replace that, the more he's going to lapse back into that. Chazal say, right? It can't just be that you go away from something bad. You have to do something positive. And recovery, which is a blanket term that I would use for 12-step programs, AA, NNA, any program like that, is basically giving a person a framework that allows him to live beyond the addiction and his general behaviors, which led to him feeling this lacking in the first place that he was trying to plug. It's not just that you can't break.
Right. I want to get to the root of that. I mean, is there one cause or many causes of what causes a lacking in a person's, I mean, don't we all have lacking? I mean, we wake up and it's like, we our whole drive to accomplish in the day is to fill the lacking or fill the void or whatever. How does it differentiate from a person who gets fixated on one thing or one dopamine rush on whatever it is that they're addicted to?
Clarify which element you want me to address.
I want to know sort of like what is, you say that something's lacking in their life, but something's lacking in all of our lives. I mean, we're growing human beings. We have this desire, this determination to accomplish that. And, we're always sort of driving or is it a hole that in our self-esteem? I'm not sure I'm understanding the driving force. Maybe there's no standing on one foot answer, but if there is an answer, I'd like to know.
So I don't know that scientifically I've ever seen something that gives a real type of answer. What they say in the introduction to the Big Book, which the Big Book is referring to the book called Alcoholics Anonymous, but the meetings are actually named after the book. But because of the confusion, I guess we just refer to it as the Big Book. They bring down something they call the allergy, that basically a certain type of person, addict, once he puts they'd say alcohol into the person's system, something gets wired in the brain that this isn't enough, whereas a different person would have a more normal reaction of like, oh, this was good, now I'm good. It triggers some kind of chemical reaction or allergy, as they're calling it, that a person is never going to be satisfied, as they say. I actually don't remember people saying something to the effect of, 1 is never enough, right? 1,000, 1 is too many. 1,000 is never enough. Something, I forget the exact.
I think you got it. You nailed it. Yeah.
Okay. So I can't say that there's a reason. However, a lot of, I'm not a shliach or representative of AA. I just know the benefits of working a program. And I've seen myself and many other people who have been active in recovery and how it has changed their lives and improved their lives. So I think that if you're asking a question like that, at least from perspective, I think that, so again, this is just my opinion. I think most everything would just be my experience and my opinion that I'm trying to volunteer. But what we're lacking, I think, can be that you didn't measure up to other people. It could be how you did in school. It could be how it could be that there was abuse. It could be that there wasn't abuse. It could be that there was just a feeling that you didn't have, and then by doing something, you suddenly got this rush, and you said, this is what I want. What you said about self-esteem, I started to smile, because in conversations I've had with Gedolim, I've been asking, the biggest problem in today's generation, I feel, is self-esteem. And so they agree. And I basically have been thinking about it since then, in the conversations I have with the buffer in my yeshiva, and the people who I counsel and people I'm speaking with in general. I actually think that we haven't even gotten to self-esteem, because I think there's just such a lack of identity in the first place, and people don't really know what they want. And what we spend so much time running away from the fact that we don't know who we are, or we're uncomfortable with who we are, that we'll just take anything that feels good. And once you start doing that, if you have this certain type of personality, then you're going to lean into it more and more. So the truth of the matter is that any person can develop a physical addiction, right? A chemical addiction to alcohol, to drugs, to anything like that. But the euphoria that a person feels when he engages in these riskier behaviors, which 100% can ruin his life, doesn't really matter what the thing is. That feeling is just something that's like, I don't have to feel like being myself. That discomfort that I have to face in any of the situations that every single one of us feel at some point or another in our lives. And the only way to overcome that is to really develop yourself into a person and to be able to have a measure being able to say no and that you're not an addict. And then, because if a person is a food addict, you can't stop eating. You can't abstain from it like alcohol or drugs. Mm-hmm. So there are areas that a person has to be able to find that he's understanding moderation and to get healthier. And a person has to be able to develop the muscles to be able to say no to themselves. Whereas in many other circumstances, we don't want to, because we tell ourselves, the world doesn't really love me. I got to show that love to myself. So what we think we're actually doing to help ourselves is actually really like framing it in a weird or bad way in our own minds, that we're not good enough ourselves. We need something else to make us better. And the results can be very, very bad if they're not addressed properly.
I feel like the biggest thing that we can give wives, is a sense of hope. That there's she's been suffering with this for 1 year, 2 years, 10 years, or 5 years, whatever. She's been suffering with her husband, with whatever kind of addiction it is. And I want to give her, I want to walk through what recovery looks like. Oh, first you get a mentor, then you get a therapist. I don't know what it looks like, but I wanted to give a sense of hope to women that here's she's just stuck there. She feels it's a shunday. She can't talk to the rabbi because her husband will be mad that now the rabbi knows he's addicted or whatever. She can't talk to her sister-in-law who he's always been putting her down and whatever. She's dealing with it by herself. And I wanted to give her a walkthrough of what recovery looks like, what steps she can be taking, how to get out of the quagmire that she's in. That's the question I'm kind of looking for.
So there's two different elements to the question that you posed. And one is the spouse or parent, and the other one is the person themselves. Now, I want to clarify that if the hardest part of this, I say for most anybody, parents, wife, anyone, is you can't fix the person. They can do it themselves. You can't do it. The more you're trying to fix it, the more frustrated you're going to get, the more the other person is going to be upset as well. It doesn't work. But that doesn't mean that it's a hopeless type of situation. But that's also one of the things people want to hear the least, because what they really want is, give me a manual in the toolbox for how I can fix the insert addict here, and let me know what it is I can do. And the answer is, there isn't. But that's not necessarily a bad thing. Although I'm sure many people would like to fix everyone around them, and they would do a better job than the person doing it themselves, and they don't understand it fully. I totally understand. At the same time, you want to know that the reason the person is doing it is that it's coming from a healthy place and that they're stable. And if they're doing it for someone else, the moment that other person is not around, or the reason, whatever it is that was inspiring them to get better is not around, they will go back to those other behaviors. And you can't give over those tools. It's not something that you can give as a gift. Here, I'm giving you the gift of recovery, or being clean, or being sober, or anything like that. It doesn't work. The person has to go through a process. Now, the process in general, the hard part amongst, there are a lot of hard parts, but I guess amongst the hard parts is getting a person to recognize that they have a problem in the first place. Very often, the person who's an addict is the last to realize that they are an addict. And very often when they say something to the people in their lives later on, saying something to the effect of, I don't know how to tell this to you, but I've actually been struggling with addiction. very often the response is, or most of the time the response is, yeah, of course. I mean, everybody, or we all knew that.
Wow.
Like, are you getting help? That's amazing. Good for you. So you want to be supportive. But at the same time, a person who's trying to be in a supportive role has to understand their support. They can't do the work, for someone else. Okay. So the person, the addict, let's call it, right? Once the person realizes that they have a problem, they have multiple resources and places that they're able to go out to, whether it's they'll go to AA meetings, or whichever meetings it is, because there's so many different types. So let's say 12-step meetings, or a person is going to go to a counselor, a person is going to go to someone who understands addiction, someone who's able to speak things over. I think that what I found, to be the best starting point, which is also, let's say, a little bit in the history of AA, is that there were alcoholics galore through history. But what they found was that people speaking to doctors, their families, and pleading and everything like that wasn't effective. What was effective at the end was one addict working with another addict. Okay. Him speaking to the other addict, because then they're in a position that you're able to relate to what the other person is saying, and you understand where the person's coming from. And if that person can't through to the other side, they're able to help you. I'm not going to give a, overview.
Goosebumps. That's amazing. Wow.
The life that you're living beforehand, before you go through this process, is basically, look what everyone's done to me. Look at how the world has treated me unjustly. And then I have to look at it the other way. It forces me to look at it from another perspective of, what about what I'm doing? Because that's the stuff I'm able to control. My interactions with other people is basically the stuff that I'm able to control, not what they're doing to me. So you probably, like most of us, need therapy, to work through the things that have been done to you and all those things in the past 100%. But let's face facts. Despite those things that happened to you, and despite the drinking and any other thing that a person might have done, you're still not happy. If you're out there causing havoc and you're not living the life that Hashem wants you to live, and taking achrayas for the things and the expectations that are on you, and being a good husband and a good father and a good spouse and everything else, chances are you're still not happy. So the more a person goes through this process, the more he is changing, or she is changing, and you're becoming a stronger, healthier, more manageable person. And that is basically where you come to your 10th, 11th, and 12th step. But basically, a person has to continue doing this work in these inventories, maintaining a conscious contact with Hashem. And lastly, that you're passing on the message, because now you actually have a manageable life. And now the uselessness that you felt beforehand, you're now actually useful, because you're able to give things over to people and help them find the light at the end of the tunnel. So that's in terms of the addict himself. Now, in terms of a person's spouse, and before I actually get to that, I'm sorry, there are countless hopeless cases that have been out there that are actually not hopeless at all. And the people have done well. It doesn't matter where a person has gone, sons, daughters, wives, husbands, anything. You can always fix these things if you're willing to put these principles into your life. It doesn't come from stopping to do whatever the addiction is. It comes from changing that mindset and that lifestyle to being the person who's able to be of service to others.
Wow. Wow.
So the
we have a bunch of questions coming in, but go ahead, Rabbi. But I just want to give you the heads up. We've got questions coming in.
So the thing about the spouse, I believe that some of these same concepts apply from one person to the other, from the addict to the family member, let's say. Okay. And that is, support is huge. You should know that you're not in alone. There are many people going through this. And it's certainly not just you. Sitting and speaking to the person who's going through it, if you can't relate, you should be trying to direct them to people who can help them get the help that they need. But you likewise need support. Programs like Al-Anon, there's something called CRAFT, which stands for Community Reinforcement and Family Training. And there's also the tough love approach, which is not necessarily recommended, but it's about nothing, chas v'shalom enabling. Okay. And then there's also individual counseling. These are tools that a person can use to try to help their spouse get help. At the end of the day, it has to come from the addict themselves, but that doesn't mean that you're alone and you don't need to be taken care of and heard and seen. So I would definitely recommend that you have people that you speak to and who can help you understand what the behaviors are that you may have engaged in that are preventing them from going and seeking help. And that's a huge range, right? It could be that, they're going to places, they're doing things, whatever it is. There are different behaviors that a person coming up, they don't realize are actually enabling type of behaviors or justifications, or you're taking them too seriously. And to go through it on your own is, besides for incredibly lonely and isolating type of thing, it's also not giving you tools with someone who's come through the other side. You want to know how to get somewhere? You got to speak to the people who've actually made it through. So you always need to have a Rav. That goes without saying. You always need to have a Rav. You need to have an expert, someone who knows and recognizes the field, someone who knows the places. I don't endorse or recommend any organization because, there are plenty of good ones out there, but speak to your Rav and speak to your people. But outside of AA, which is what I'm familiar with, and Al-Anon, which I'm less familiar with, but I know many people who are in Al-Anon, there's nothing that I really recommend, but there are many great resources out there. And in the firm world especially, I would just say that because it's something we don't really discuss, even when you'd say on a show like this or something, this is only for people who are suffering, it's very limiting. The reach that you're able to tap. And it's something that we don't really speak about. And it's amazing how many people reach out to me. I did not go out and say that I'm someone who's in recovery. AA stands for Alcoholics Anonymous. It's an anonymous program. And all of a sudden I'm sitting here and you see my face, you know my name, and like what happened to anonymity? Someone had outed me, then, or they'd spoken about, there's this guy who's a rabbi who's in recovery. And my Rebbe basically told me, you have to go out and start speaking of the stuff. This is a small element of my life, but without having that, without having this, I wouldn't be able to live the same life. And it's amazing how many people reach out to me just because, they know that there is someone, there's a name of someone who's in AA who they're able to speak to and get help. So it makes it worthwhile despite the fact that it is an anonymous program. And I don't really like being seen in the public sphere, especially not for their, addiction and things like that.
Okay, I'm going to take questions. Totally got it, Rabbi. It's fantastic. Go ahead, Deb. What the question and I think we're pretty much out of time. So,
Okay.
and maybe we have time for two questions, I think.
Okay. Hannah's asking, I don't want my husband's addiction to continue impacting my marriage, but I feel I've been replaced with something better and more exciting. How can I stop taking it personally so I won't feel second best?
I think that people need to have a support group. But chances are the feelings that he had, or the things that he's trying to, that his addiction is supposed to serve, were there long before someone else came into the picture, before he got married, before children, before anything like that. And if given a choice, I don't think that a person would say, I'd rather have their addiction than the family and the life that they want to build. So it's not something you should take personally. He's a sick person. You wouldn't treat someone who's sick, as being, why does this person love being in bed more than, spending time with me? Spending time with your spouse. No, you're sick and you need to rest. That person is sick who's still on what he thinks is his medicine, and he's not in a position to be able to get better. However, if he gets the help that he needs, he'll be able to prioritize and to be able to be part of a family and a marriage and to be a good partner. And the more that she's able to show him the kind of support that he needs to get that kind of help, the sooner hopefully he'll be able to find a recovery that would allow him to be the husband that it should be and isn't really capable at this current moment in time, which is not an excuse for him. He has to answer for each side of the street, but you shouldn't take it personally because he's looking for something that's exciting and he's found some kind of medicine that isn't working and he's stuck in it and he's a sick person who needs help.
Very nice. Go ahead, Deb. What's your next question?
Okay, Panine is asking, as a wife of a husband in recovery, can you give me some things I can say to him that would make him feel supported?
I think that it's a loaded question because you don't really know how long the person has been in recovery for and the dynamic within the relationship. However, anytime that something comes up that her husband needs to get to a meeting or that he is feeling, let's say, triggered, right? He's in a circumstance that he feels uncomfortable. Pay attention to those nuances and see how you can look out for him. And if, for example, if he's going to family and the family hasn't really accepted if he's an alcoholic, right, and they're pouring wine for kiddush or something like that, don't make a scene out of it. Ask him what you can do to support him. Speak to him and ask him how he feels. And if there's anything to do, does he feel like he needs to stay? Does he need to go? If a person's been around for longer, ultimately the relationship hopefully develops to a point that you're able to be pretty open in the communication and you're able to ask more direct questions. For example, if I am out of sorts or whatever may be happening, there may be occasions that my wife would say something to me of, have you gone to a meeting? When was the last time you spoke to your sponsor? And if I am defensive about my response, I know that she's probably right. And it's time for me to reach out to someone else, to try to be of help to someone else or to reach out for help with someone else who I can relate to. But I think that's something that's like further off in the future. And if not, I can respond without being defensive or something like that. I know that I'm in a good place. So I think the more that you're indoctrinated into what recovery is and what it means for the person to have, again, it's not about not drinking or getting into your vice, right? It's about the solution. So the more familiar the wife is with the solution, the more easily she's able to tap into those things. And I'd also try to give chizuk and say that most every person I know who's in recovery, and I've met them and their wives, or I've spoken with them, counseled, whatever the case may be, every single one of them has said one of the best things that's happened to them in their life is their husband being in recovery and that they have an address, a place to go to deal with their problems. Because if someone is suffering from, let's say, anger or anxiety or something like that, there isn't necessarily a known thing of what you can do to address it. If your problem is addiction, Baruch Hashem, there's an address you're able to go to and to address it properly. So it's a huge bracha that most people, most spouses I've ever heard have said this is like one of the greatest things that's ever happened in their lives.
Kol hakavod. Okay, Rabbi, this has been amazing, edifying, right, ladies? Wow. Thank you. Hashem should bench you, and everybody who's suffering this should be a source of chizuk and hope for a better future. Thank you so much for being with us, Rabbi.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, it's Leah Richheimer for the Ladies Talk Show. We'll see you next time.